We're here with Carlos Lando, who is the general manager of KU.
I'm not the general manager.
Okay.
Okay,
we're here with Carlos Lando, who is the COO and
program director
of KUVO, which is one of the remaining 3 jazz stations in the United States. Welcome, Carlos. Thank you for participating in our project.
You're welcome.
What does jazz mean to the Denver community?
Well, jazz to the Denver community. You know, obviously, the Denver community is so diverse and so forth. So, first and foremost, anybody who loves music is affected by jazz. I don't care if you're a country music fan or you just love to go out and dance because you love salsa or you love world music or whatever. Somewhere, somehow, somewhere down the line, jazz plays a role in this because you know, the essence of American music is rooted in the blues, and that means it's rooted in soul. It's something that comes from the heart, and inevitably it means rhythm. It means swing, and so when you go back to the beginning of what jazz means, this community has a rich history in that. So whether you just arrived, you know, a few years ago, or you've been here a long, long time, somewhere, somehow you were exposed to jazz. And if you look at the musical history of our community, you come to understand that whether you grew up on the north side or you're right here in 5 Points or in what we call in the real heart and soul of Denver, it means a lot because it has a legacy that goes back to the beginning of jazz. If you follow history of jazz, you know about New Orleans, you know about the music going up to Chicago, and interestingly enough, Denver wasn't too far behind. It was actually, you know, in the late 20s, early 30s, Denver already had a scene established for jazz with the territorial band. So number one, it means a lot because it has a legacy here.
What is the importance of the jazz community in furthering the diverse cultural life of the community?
Well, it's important in how jazz has an impact on that, because even more so today, there are so many young people who come to jazz from a different musical and cultural perspective. I mentioned earlier about this whole aspect of rhythm. Well, rhythm and swing doesn't just mean 4/4 time. It means really experiencing the drum from a different perspective. And today, of course, we have lots of hip hop and rock elements into jazz. A lot of young people are into what we call sampling or electronica. Jazz today, through some very, very talented musicians, not just young musicians, are also in a very, what I would call, experimental stage as well. So it is more open, it is more diverse, it reaches more people in different communities. It's so interesting to talk to young people today. They don't even know that they're hearing, they're hearing elements of Monk and Mingus and Charlie Parker, and they're hearing elements of Tito Puente in the music. They're not aware of it until they get a little further into the music. So today, jazz more than ever has really opened up the door, for young people in the diversity. And the other part about that is that they can access it in a way that they've never been able to access it. Even if you never leave your house, you can be exposed to jazz and to all the elements because of the internet and the whole wireless and the new media revolution, which we're all a part of.
What is your vision of the future of jazz in the region?
Well, I think that this region is going to really explode for jazz, for some of the reasons that I mentioned earlier, meaning that people here seem to have an open ear for jazz in terms of being open, meaning that it doesn't just swing in one way. For years, Denver was known as a pretty, what we call, straight-ahead, swing-based town, which was good. I mean, 50s and 40s and 60s. But now, as we're in a new century, you can still hear some of that traditions of jazz. But more importantly, I think what's going to make this town so rich for jazz is that in any given night in the near future, and now, as a matter of fact, since we have so many musicians who have studied the music, because we have a really strong support from the educational institutions for music that really value the essence of jazz. You're seeing a lot of young people now incorporate that into their music. Again, whether they're dyed-in-the-wool jazz musicians or not, it doesn't matter. And I think that's going to bode well for Denver, because what happens is that the music is only as strong as the musicians and the people who are listening to it. And yes, I'm an older jazz fan and won't be around forever, but I hope that there's somebody out there listening that is getting turned on to jazz and experiencing it in a different way that I did, so that they can pass it along to someone else. So, and Denver is ripe for that. Denver is growing more diverse, not just musically but culturally all the time. And when you have those two elements working together, it's going to be here.
I want to ask you one more question. How can the corporate community support the thriving jazz community?
Well, I think number one, the corporate community needs to understand that that they need to think a little bit outside of the normal bounds. I guess it would depend on the companies that you might approach, or corporate's such a big word, but certainly the companies that have some kind of plan in place for diversity to begin with, in terms of how they reach out to the community, those will be the leaders in stepping up and supporting jazz, and understanding that jazz, my central theme in all this is that jazz is really influenced now globally. Rhythmically, it is influenced, and harmonically, it's a global music. We gave it to the world, but the influences are coming from everywhere. And if you tie that into a global perspective in terms of corporate, and in terms of reaching out culturally across not just Denver, but across the world, then it makes sense that there's something, you would find something here under this jazz umbrella that makes sense from a corporate standpoint. Whether that is supporting some community endeavor, a specific thing that helps a community outreach program, whether it's through music or health or whatever. Music is a real healing force. It really cures a lot of ailments that people have. So the corporate companies that understand that, get beyond the quote unquote profit mentality, can reap long-term benefits by being associated with jazz.
Thank you. We've just spoken with Carlos Lando, the COO, Program Director of KUVO. Thank you, Carlos.